Welcome to Monadnock Community Hospital's seminar on Advance Directives, a difficult conversation, but a very important one. Tonight we will be having presentations done by our three panelists, and afterwards we will have a question and answer session. I will ask that everybody please, if you have questions, hold them until we get to the question and answer session. First, I would like to introduce Reverend Dan Osgood. Reverend Osgood has a doctorate in ministry. He is a founding member of our ethics committee. He is also part of the ethics committee up at Crotchet Mountain, and he is the pastor of the Greenfield Church. Next to him is Molly Rajaniemi. Molly works here. She is our compliance officer. She has a master's degree in business and also a certificate in healthcare. And last but never least is Dr. Lucas Shippee. Luke has been with us since, I did not realize you've been with us since you came out of residency.
That's correct.
For 18 years. He is an internist, and they will all be speaking about their various areas of expertise. And with that said, Reverend Osgood, I give you the floor.
We're going to begin by taking a look at ethics. What is it? First of all, we'll go through fairly quickly, and then we're going to look at what is the basis, the ethical basis for advanced medical directives. So hopefully it'll be a good lead into what we're, there we go, nope. It's not. There we, no, okay, one more. Okay, what does ethics mean to you? Some words that you might use for related to ethics: righteousness, conscience, integrity, belief, values, all those things, all those words might be words that come to mind when we think about ethics. I went the wrong way. The meaning of ethics is sometimes hard to pin down. The views of many people have about ethics can be shaky. So what does ethics mean to you? Basically, it has to do with right and wrong, right? And how we decide what's right and wrong. Ethics, a very formal definition. Ethics is a systematic study of and reflection of morality. It is systematic because it is a discipline that uses special methods and approaches to examine moral situations. So you have a moral situation. How do you examine that? How do you decide what is right or wrong? It is also a reflection because it consciously calls into question assumptions about existing components of our morality. This is the moral and ethical thing to do. Sometimes we hear that. What is the moral and ethical thing to do? This is the moral and ethical thing to do. What is morality? Morality is a sum of attitudes, conduct, and character traits that describe how human beings in a particular setting have agreed to live so that everyone can exist in harmony. So we can exist together. Morality helps to define basic shared values and goals. What are our shared values and goals? And ethics, morality helps to define those basic shared values and goals. Here's Bernard Gert, was professor at Dartmouth for many years, kind of started the whole ethics thing in our area, New Hampshire, New England. Morality is an informal public system applying to all rational persons, governing behavior that affects others, and includes what are commonly known as values, ideals, virtues, and has the lessening of evil or harm as its goal. I like that. Has the lessening of evil or harm as its goal. The four basic principles of ethics. There are basically four fundamental, universal, basic principles. They are autonomy, beneficence, do no harm or non-malfeasance, and justice. So we're going to look at those briefly and how they relate to why we're here tonight as we think about advanced medical directives. So autonomy, going the wrong way or something here. Yes, autonomy. What is it? What's autonomy? People have the right to control what happens to them in their bodies. Okay? This principle simply means that an informed, competent adult has the right to control what happens to him or her because they are free and rational. These decisions must be respected by everyone, even if these decisions are believed not to be in the best interest of the person. Autonomy is self-determination, right? We have a right to decide. And this is probably the most basic of the ethical values, principles, when we think about advanced medical directives. Advanced medical directives are derived from the ethical principles of a patient's autonomy. A person has a right to decide to make your medical decisions. And of course, what we're going to be looking at tonight and talking about is what happens if for some reason you can't make those decisions. Then what happens? And that's where the advanced medical directives come in. Advanced medical directives help ensure that patients receive the care they want and guide the patient's family members in dealing with decision making. I can't tell you, I've been a pastor for almost 40 years, I can't tell you how many families have struggled with those decisions where there was no advanced medical directive, and how many families have said we feel so relieved that in that time when we're going through grief and pain, that we didn't have to make those decisions. They were already made because my loved one had made them already, and everyone knew them. So autonomy is one of the basic, the most basic probably of the principles. What am I doing? Going the wrong way. Okay, keep doing that. Also, kind of a caveat to autonomy is a sub-principle of fidelity, truth-telling. To have medical folks, physicians, medical staff, tell you the truth about your situation so you can make an informed decision. And sometimes that's hard. And one of the things in my years of being connected with Monadnock Community Hospital that I have come to appreciate the most, or one of the things I do appreciate, maybe not the most, but one of the things I do appreciate is how I've seen over and over again physicians come in and say, okay, this is your prognosis, this is your diagnosis, and just explain it all out so you can make an informed. You can't make an informed decision if you don't have the information. So fidelity, truth-telling is a fundamental to respecting autonomy. Beneficence, do the best. All care providers must strive to improve their clients' well-being, patients' well-being, so on, to do the most good for the person in every situation. What is the most good here? But what is good for one person may not be good for another. That's why we have autonomy. That's why we can make our own decisions. That's why we have advanced medical directives. They're going to be different. We're going to have different understandings and different ways of looking at the medical issue. So each situation should be considered individually. Other values that might conflict with beneficence may need to be considered, like autonomy or one of the other principles of ethics. Third principle of ethics is non-malfeasance or do no harm. This is the bedrock of medical ethics, do no harm. In every situation, caregivers, physicians, staff should avoid causing harm to those in their care. That's very basic. Hippocratic oath. You should also be aware of the doctrine of double effect, where an action intended for good unintentionally causes more harm than good. That is the doctrine of double effect. This doctrine helps you make difficult decisions about whether actions with double effects can be undertaken. And finally, the final principle is justice. The fourth principle demands that you should try to be as just and fair as possible in dealing with a person. Within the medical profession, that has to do a great deal with distribution and delivery of health services, right? It doesn't matter whether you whether you're a millionaire or whether you're homeless. Medical procedures, so on, the distribution of resources needs to be just. It needs to be the same. And and when we come to what's true, when we come to fairness is what justice is really all about. What's fair in this situation? What's fair in this medical situation? Okay? We need this at the end, not now. How did I do on time? Okay, good. I'm usually not timed, so
All right. My name's Molly Rajaniemi. I'm the patient experience coordinator and the HIPAA and compliance officer here at the hospital. So I do, for my patient experience work, a lot of like complaints resolution, and then sort of on the compliance and HIPAA side, including ADA, which is like disability services, interpreter services, making sure there's equitable access to health care, and also navigating some of the, kind of legal issues, regulations that are state, federal-based, as well as our own internal policies. So I'm going to give you sort of a basic framework of understanding advance directives and sort of the rules we have to follow when we're talking about these. So the state of New Hampshire recognizes an advance directive as two parts. The first being the durable power of attorney for healthcare, or DPOAH. I can't say all those letters consistently all the time, so I'm going to say power of attorney. So your power of attorney for healthcare and a living will. So both of those pieces are important because the DPOA is going to answer who can help you with those medical decisions if you are unable to do so for yourself. And then the living will is sort of a guideline in terms of how you would like those questions to be answered. So who is doing the talking and what kind of things do they need to know? What do you need to outline for them? So the power of attorney, what it means is this is the person who's going to be your surrogate, your agent, your proxy. Those words are often used interchangeably when we're talking about these sort of things. And depending on what state you're in, one or more might be more prominent. So your power of attorney is someone who's going to speak for you, but that does not take effect until it needs to. So Dr. Shippee later is going to talk a little bit about some of the medical component and the medical decision making that relates to these kind of things. But just because, say, my mom has listed me as her power of attorney, that doesn't mean I can go sign all her paperwork for her if she is an autonomous, informed, and competent person, right? She's not been incapacitated, therefore she still has the rights, and I'm just sort of on standby should something happen or change. It is also interesting to think about what does it mean to be incapacitated. Sometimes we think about something like maybe advanced dementia or Alzheimer's, where you can't really make those sound decisions anymore, or you got in a car accident and you are in a medically induced coma. You are clearly not making actionable decisions at that point. But the other thing to consider is maybe you went, I don't want to tell any horror stories, but what if you went in for a colonoscopy, it's routine, and you had a bad reaction to anesthesia, right? And now you are unable to be speaking for yourself anymore, right? So at any time to any person, something sort of casual could go wrong, unfortunately, that's life. You could be in an accident. Something bad could happen. So these things that are preventative measures. Typically, when you're thinking about who should act as your power of attorney, it can really be anyone in your life as long as they are an adult. You really want to focus on somebody who's able to respect your wishes, right? If you know that your sister is terribly opposed to you being a DNR, a do not resuscitate order, right? Perhaps she's not the one who's going to be the most level-headed in these highly emotional situations, right? No disrespect to your sister. And also, you know, having worked in the hospital for some time, it's not that we can't call your cousin in Nebraska, but it sure is a lot more convenient if it's someone who can come be by your side, see how you're doing, really be on the ground, so to speak, with you while they're making those decisions. So helpful, but totally okay. You can assign who you want. There also is typically a primary and then a secondary DPOA. So I said before, if my mom lists me and then she lists my little brother as the secondary, if something were to happen to my mother, power of attorney is activated. My brother has no rights in the situation until I cannot serve for whatever reason. So again, just having the name on the piece of paper does not activate anything. That is going to be a decision that's more for your providers to make. The next piece is the living will. So this is, again, a guide about your preferences, about how you would like to manage your healthcare when you are in a state to be unable to speak for yourself. So this is distinct from medical orders, which we'll touch on later, but it's basically a guideline about what kind of things are you comfortable with. Are you more inclined to be like, throw absolutely everything at me, I want all the life-sustaining treatment, artificial nutrition, etc. Or do you only want those sort of interventions if you have a reasonable prognosis or chance of recovery? So sort of understanding the basic lane that you would like your power of attorney to take when and if they get the reins on your health care. So are advance directives required? Short answer is no, not technically. Strongly encouraged. There is federal and state laws that empower people to have this autonomy and self-determination to make sure that they are in charge of their health care and they can make decisions in advance should something happen. They are also, there's some reciprocity state to state. So if I move to Alaska tomorrow and something happened to me, my durable power of attorney for healthcare would still be in effect in Alaska, barring any like strict state laws. But typically speaking, it's reciprocal. And I threw this quote in here, and I think it'll be on some slides later, but it always seems too soon until it's too late, right? So just because you're healthy, just because you're well, just because you've talked to your spouse about what you want, if you don't have it in writing, things are going to get murky if something were to happen. Now, if you don't have an advance directive and one of those poor outcomes happens, right, we do have laws that dictate in what order the people in your life are going to be sort of tapped on the shoulder to start making decisions. So it goes in this order here: spouse, adult child, parent, adult sibling, adult grandchild, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, close friend, agent of your estate. And basically, this person sort of becomes the default. So if I have an adult child, but I also have a spouse, it's going to go to my spouse. Doesn't matter if it was actually, I really wanted my oldest child to do this. It's going to go down in sequence, assuming who's next, right? Similarly speaking, if you have several adult children, what's going to happen at that point? And, you know, to some extent, things can progress, but sometimes they really can't. You know, we've run into situations here at the hospital where it seemed too soon, but now it's too late, right? And now this person sort of is stagnated in their care and their medical options because they don't have the autonomy or the capacity to make their decisions, and they never named anyone. Or perhaps there are two people with 50-50 decision making, which can be assigned if that's something you choose. However, those people really, really need to agree. And they don't often, unfortunately. It can cause a lot of problems because, you know, speaking on behalf of Monadnock, we are not a court system. So if you have two 50-50 decision makers and they are fighting, we really can't tell them who's right or who's wrong, right? We would have to defer to probate court. That's a whole process, redefine the decision making or the specific decision. So not ideal. So in terms of literally, when you go to make your advance directive, the state of New Hampshire has easily accessible forms on healthynewhampshire.org. We have them in the back there. I printed it in 2 parts, so there's a stapled packet that has information, definitions, some of this topics that we went over, and then the 3 pages that are the actual form. So, it asks you, who do you want to be your power of attorney, questions about living will, etc. So that's step 1. You're literally filling out a piece of paper, right? And also, you really do need to discuss this with the people in your life. Not only, the power of attorney that you're naming, but that secondary person. They need to know that they are that person for you. They need to, if you name them and they don't agree, it's, fairly too late in that case, but you should be asking them, right? And they should have an understanding of what your preferences are. Because, it's an emotional thing to be going through. This is going to be activated and to sort of be like, surprise, you're in charge, and now you're gonna have to live with this for the rest of your life. Like, did I make the right decision? Is this what, my mom or my sister or my friend would have wanted? So it's a gift to make sure that you're giving them that clarity. So once you have the document, what do you do with it? I will say, of course, give it to your power of attorney, whoever is named in that document, so that way, if you're rushed to the hospital or something, you're incapacitated, you're not going to say, I have a DPOA somewhere. Your DPOA can bring it. Your primary care provider's office should have a copy. If you have a specialist that you frequently go to, say you commute up to Dartmouth for a specialist, they should have it on file there as well. If you have a lawyer who's dealing with other estate planning and other powers of attorney for like financial or et cetera. And also, you're all here tonight, so you know where Monadnock Community Hospital is. Maybe this is not your regular care provider. Maybe you go to Milford, Concord, wherever. But think about if someone called 911 for you when you're in your kitchen. Where's that ambulance going to bring you, right? So it is protected under statute that if you have an advance directive, any hospital in New Hampshire can keep that on file for you. So it's sort of like on reserve, so to speak, because again, it feels too soon until it's too late because you're trying to do this in advance to make sure that it is all come together for you. I am going to switch it over to Dr. Shippee, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the medical aspects of what is not included in Advance Directive. So I will pass it to you. Clipper's right here.
Yeah, and so Molly made the comment that that quote I think is very fitting. It's too early until it's too late. And I've actually seen advice about sending your kids off to college and considering having them develop and have a living will and advance directive on file in case they had a catastrophic car accident, something like that. So too early doesn't exist for this stuff. So I would encourage you to really think through this stuff and be explicit about it. I'm going to echo even more strongly the importance of talking to your agents and not listing 2 people as primary. It turns into the potential for a nightmare and the possibility that you don't end up with the things that you want at or near the end of your life or in a situation where you have to rely on somebody else to make your decisions. So naming brother and sister, sister and sister, brother and brother as primary, in my experience, not a good idea. Additionally, you will have a power of attorney, or hopefully name a power of attorney for your finances and business dealings. Generally not a great idea to have them be the same person, right? So power of attorney for health and power of attorney for finances ideally are different people, because you can put that person in a pretty sticky wicket at times where their judgment and their decision making could be called into question. They're in charge of your finances. They also are stand to inherit some of those finances, and they get to decide whether you get nutrition, IV fluids, etc. So not ideal situations if you've got one person making those decisions. And I have seen some horror stories with some of these situations. So I would say early and often conversations are super important, and being thoughtful about how and who you name is very important. You will never be able to have a conversation with that agent and cover every scenario, but they should have a general sense of, if my prognosis is to be X level of quality of life, I would just as soon not come back for that quality of life. So you can either remove care or not supply additional levels of care, and make sure that they understand what those levels might be. So just dovetailing to some of the medical orders components of this stuff, it is very common for me to sit in my office and ask someone, do you have a do not resuscitate? And the answer is yes. Okay, you do. Do we have a copy of that? You should. We dig through the chart. What do we find? Durable power of attorney for healthcare and a living will. And they think that means do not resuscitate. They are not the same thing. And they imply very different things and are applied in very different situations. So living will is really applied in the setting where we understand prognosis. We can predict prognosis. Someone's got advanced stage 4 cancer, they're near the end of life, and we can say they're probably not going to live more than several months. So we can do an okay job of predicting that. We're not perfect in the medical world, but DNR and those kinds of applications are in the moment potentially. I have a cardiac arrest at the grocery store and I have a do not resuscitate order. If I've done my due diligence to make that known, which we wouldn't necessarily tell everyone, but these forms that are filled out as a physician or clinician order imply do not resuscitate. There's a wallet card, so that would be with you presumably. Some people are staunch enough in their belief that they don't want to be resuscitated, have CPR, electric shock to the heart, and those kind of interventions that they would wear a medical alert bracelet. I've seen people go as far as have that tattooed right here. So they open your chest to do CPR, they see what you want, and they stop, right? So if you are staunch enough to want that because you have a cardiac arrest in the grocery store, then the medical alert bracelet or the wallet card would kind of make that known to people. The pink form typically would go on the refrigerator at home, and EMS knows that they would to look there if they were called to the house on a 911 call, et cetera. So you would, the issue comes in the confusion, right? Patients think they have a do not resuscitate and they have a living will. They are different, and it's important to clarify that. Living will, it's never too early. This, does an 18-year-old need, want, should they have a do not resuscitate order? In most cases, probably not. We would want to, and they would want to, probably press every button that you could in order to try to sustain life and have some meaningful recovery from whatever event they might be dealing with. But as we get older and or have additional medical considerations, these things become a different consideration. So in lots of different ways. If I have congestive heart failure and I know that my quality of life is limited, I can't walk to my mailbox without profound shortness of breath. If I have a cardiac arrest and they resuscitate me, odds are my quality of life takes another step down. I might decide, you know what, if that door opens, I'm ready to walk through it. Don't resuscitate me. That's the kind of application for this type of order from your physician and or nurse practitioner, et cetera. So the clarification is that this is not the same as a living will. This form is one step further, and this is called a POST or physician order for life-sustaining treatment. Much more explicit and allows a little bit more clarification in what your wishes might be. So this is just do not resuscitate me if I have a cardiac arrest. This would be more like if I have that heart failure condition and it seems like every month I'm transported to the emergency room because I'm developing worsening shortness of breath, and I get admitted to the hospital for 2 or 3 days, and they give me some medications and correct the situation, and I get transported back home, and I'm flip-flopping, and the quality of life is diminishing. I could opt in this form to say, I don't want to be hospitalized. Do not resuscitate is part of it, but I could say I'll accept antibiotics, but I won't accept a feeding tube, or I'll accept IV fluids, but I don't want the feeding tube, or those kinds of things. So you can be more explicit in this with your clinician, and it's different than a do not resuscitate order, although it does include the do not resuscitate as part of it. So these are different layers, sort of above and beyond your standard living will, advance directive kind of documents that you would develop. So that's sort of informational so you understand the differences and could discuss that with your clinicians and or family members, surrogates, etc. All right, turn it back over.
Karen was unable to make it tonight, so I'm going to hop in for her. Karen is a social worker here at the hospital. She has experience in both outpatient and inpatient and primary care settings. So I worked alongside Karen for, I think, 5 or so years fairly directly when I worked in social services. So hopefully I'm doing her justice here. You're both welcome to interrupt as well. So what Karen wants to present here tonight is why have these conversations? Why deeply engage in these uncomfortable topics with your loved ones? Hopefully we've illustrated that a little bit in terms of maintaining our autonomy, making sure that our wishes are respected, giving the gift to the people who care about us, that we're giving them some clarity and peace of mind. They don't have to wonder if they made the wrong decision. So we're just going to explore a little bit here. Again, it seems too soon till it's too late. These are hard conversations to start. I think I remember my mom dropped off some cookies and said, "Just so you know, you're my durable power of attorney." And I said, "Okay, thank you." Some people are comfortable with a more brief conversation. Some would like to sit down and have a cup of tea. But what ultimately is important is to make sure that we're having the conversation. So who needs to be involved? Think about the people who are important to you in your life. Could be a spouse, could be a cousin, could be your best friend, could be your parents. You also, of course, are welcome to consult with your healthcare provider, especially if you have some chronic medical conditions or worrying conditions that you feel would sort of tip the scales in one direction or another. Also, spiritual or religious guidance. As we were talking about ethics and morality before, what's right for one person isn't necessarily going to be right for the other, and that could be a whole host of different factors. It could be religious, it could be a medical basis, it could just be a long-held belief. If I, in my 30s, am diagnosed with cancer, pursuing treatment is probably going to be a lot different than if I'm 99 and I've been diagnosed with cancer, right? You have all these things to weigh. So it's important to get those voices involved. And just in case I didn't explicitly say so before, you do not have to have a lawyer to complete these forms for advance directives. Certainly if you have other things that you're working on, estate planning, et cetera, you can pull it all together. But you don't have to. So again, my mom came in and gave me cookies or something, or chicken soup, and said, "By the way." So you could do that. You could do it when you're driving the car and they're a passenger and they can't leave, so they have to listen to you. You could set up a date. You could, you could start it by text if it's really awkward. The point is, you really need to start. You need to start somewhere for awareness, for understanding, and for, honestly, determining if this person who you're considering to be your power of attorney is the right person for you, in the sense of, in a highly emotional situation, are they going to act on those emotions, or are they going to reflect upon what you've discussed, right? As was mentioned before, the financial versus the healthcare decision making, those things could get sticky, or at least be perceived as sticky. So thinking about how you're having those is also important. Again, we want to make sure that we're covering all the aspects of our life when we're having these conversations. Ultimately, from a purely getting things done perspective from the hospital, if you have a durable power of attorney, that already opens up a lot of avenues that we would be sort of roadblocked if you did not. So first and foremost, having something is better than nothing. You need to indicate the general preferences in your living will about what you might or might not want. You also, after you get to that point, can then defer to a more medical-based conversation. And you can also open it up to be a little bit broader. A lot of this has been a bit technical, talking about IV fluids and CPR, but some people have particular wishes for their end of the life, right? Some people want to be surrounded by friends and family, and honestly, some people want to be alone. Some people would prefer to sort of bow out at their best and not be seen at their worst, so to speak. Everybody has different preferences, and right, wrong, or indifferent. Our jobs as power of attorneys are to respect those. So write down your thoughts. we recommend this Conversation Project workbook. There's also a whole host of other different resources publicly available typically to sort of get you thinking about some of these topics, like what is important to me, who do I want by my side, who do I trust, what your values are in that regard. So this Conversation Project workbook has a lot of those thoughtful questions so you can sort of start to think about it, because it is a bit of an overwhelming topic that, depending on your background, your health, your family, may or may not be something that's easy to do. So for considering yourself in this situation, whether you are receiving information from a loved one or you are giving it, people can be uncomfortable, right? It's not the easiest topic to broach. Some people are like, why are you talking to me about this? Are you dying? Like, what's happening here? It's okay to do bits and pieces, right? A little bit is okay. You can follow up later over time. If you've got the time, that's great, but get a foundation going. It's also important to remember that it's not necessarily permanent. If I create my Advance Directive document today, and I name Dr. Shippee as my power of attorney, which would be kind of weird. I could then fill it out tomorrow and have Michael Greenough be my power of attorney. I can change it. Whatever is the most recent is going to supersede the other ones. Now that said, if you made like 365 copies and they were scattered across the United States, that would be confusing. But technically, whatever is most recent is going to override the other ones. So you can evolve over time. And like I touched upon before, my decisions in my 30s are going to be different from perhaps my 40s, 50s, and so on. So this is what the Conversation Starter Guide looks like. We have also, of course, all these resources on the back table here. But that concludes this section here.
Can I echo something that you,
please do.
One thing on the comment that the most recent supersedes the last one prior to that. Things change, right? So loved one, friend, someone who was trusted at one time, maybe their life changes in a way that makes that not the case. So you don't want to lose track of these things and forget that I named my son and they now live in Germany and would be awfully difficult to contact at times in order to be my surrogate. So things do change in life, and you don't want to lose track of that. I've seen that happen too.
All right, first of all, thank you very much to our panelists. Great job. We are now going to start the question and answer portion of the evening. Does anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
I just, before coming here, I was reading the latest issue of the Monadnock Ledger transcript, and they were talking about the accident that just occurred on Route 101 this past Monday. Two-car collision, head-on, 3 occupants between the 2 vehicles. 2 of the occupants in one of the vehicles were transported to Elliott Hospital. They live in Drake, Massachusetts, according to the article. How does all this follow them?
Great.
Great question. Dr.
So
Shippee?
I would say if I'm the ER clinician receiving that patient, we're going to do everything we can to save their life, right? That we're not going to call around for a living will and see if we can track that down and Drake it somewhere, et cetera. Unless there's a family member right there who says, look, they have a power of attorney, et cetera, and that clinician will want to track that down. They don't want to take anyone's word for it. So they're going to work to save the person's life. And then if that person ends up, let's say, worst case scenario on life support, no brain function, they're going to find that document, they're going to track that stuff down through their primary care clinician and family members, et cetera, in order to decide and have a surrogate, hopefully, or a document say, this person stated clearly they would not want to remain on life support or have a feeding tube placed or et cetera.
Yeah, I understand that. The fundamental of my question is, how does that process take place when somebody is, I don't know what the condition was of the individual,
Right.
but apparently it was serious enough that they didn't bring them
It's
here.
going to take days to figure all that out.
So
they
somebody has to, at the receiving hospital,
Yep.
start that process of backtracking.
Right. And they might start by finding, like, okay, where's their wallet? Here's their driver's license.
Right.
Yep. And some people have little wallet cards that say, okay, my power of attorney
But
is
if they don't,
Sally.
I'm curious
Yeah.
because I've always wondered. We moved up here from Massachusetts
Yes.
almost 7 years ago. And the process of getting our medical records up here, we're still doing that.
Yep, it's difficult.
Yeah, so they would use every resource available to them. So let's say
Police.
the person ends up in intensive care on a life support mechanism. They're gonna okay, we're gonna rifle through their wallet. Okay, we have the license, driver's license, we know their full name. We'll use the police if we have to in order to track down where did they live, who's their next of kin, and start the process of tracking all that information down. But it doesn't follow well, and if you move, it's a good idea to carry that with you and give it to your new physicians and your new local hospital and so on. But in the moment of I'm traveling in the Midwest and have an accident, they're going to A, save the person's life, B, track down that information by whatever means they need to.
Okay.
Rare occasions, could there be a John or Jane Doe they never figure out?
Yes.
It could, yeah.
Certainly. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I would have a curious question with the ambulance going clear to Massachusetts. If I were still able to talk to you, I'm in the accident, I can speak to you, and I say, I would like to be taken to Massachusetts Hospital, would there be a question about that?
Can I take that one?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I have a background in fire and EMS, and it's all going to depend on your condition. If your condition is unstable and I need to get you to the closest place to stabilize you, and then we can transfer you to your hospital of choice, then that's what's going to be done. If it is the case, though, many times now, we transport to UMass because it's a trauma and it's faster to get the patient there, or we fly a lot of people now, too. We have helicopters at our fingertips that we've never had before, so from time to time. But hospital of choice really comes down to your condition. Like, you can't call 911 and ask them to take you down to Lake here, right? It's just not a 911 call, right? 911 is to get you to the closest care as soon as you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So as far as what age do we really start talking about this? If I have a kid who's in high school getting ready for college, you're actually talking to them. If I haven't been married yet and I don't have children, I start talking to my siblings. You know, I'm thinking I talk about this at retirement, but that might be a little late.
Right. So it isn't technically once you turn 18, right, age of majority, your parents are no longer just presumed to be your guardians. So if you've turned 18, it is time to put something on file. And I can specifically remember turning 18, and I was at internal medicine, and they said, welcome, and they gave me that, and I thought, this is old person stuff. And I didn't do it. So I think it's very hard to impress upon somebody who's, 18, 19, 20, that it is an important thing to do. But again, you're not even necessarily thinking about yourselves in their situation, you're thinking about your loved ones. Your parents, if you are in a terrible accident, for example, need to know that, there's some peace there. They don't want to have to grapple with that. So 18 is the answer.
Okay. Are there any? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, I wear a medical bracelet for a different reason, but should I choose DNR, should I have DNR engraved in my medical bracelet?
That's up to you.
I don't know if do they do two on a medical alert?
I don't know if they'll do two on the same bracelet, or you'd have to have a second.
Yeah.
It's up to you, and how I would say it's up to you based on how staunch you are in the belief and the need, the desire to be a do not resuscitate. In other words, if you're at the grocery store, have a cardiac arrest, and you don't have anything identifying you as a do not resuscitate order, and someone resuscitates you, are you going to be really upset about that? Or are you going to say, I understand why they did it, etc. Now I'm here with a lower quality of life, etc. So, like I said, it depends on your own belief system, how aggressively you want someone to follow that wish and be aware of that wish.
All right. Yes, sir.
Well, I was in a situation where I had power of attorney for my ex-boss, and you've explained why I did not have power of health attorney for him. It was a difficult situation to understand exactly why I did not. Daughter lived in Seattle, easily available by telephone, and really didn't enter into the conversation until we were near end-of-life situation. But now I understand why that was not granted to me at the time. I was made his power of attorney for his financial and all of the other things. So that gives me clarity. Second, though, with DNRs, if you had it on a bracelet, but you haven't had a medical evaluation, is that the right thing to do?
Well, you can't, sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was just gonna say, to follow up on it though, but if you have a DNR, but your situation is such that you could be resuscitated and have a decent quality of life, isn't that sort of taking away the option of being taken care of?
So if you're pursuing a legitimate medical DNR bracelet, in order to receive that bracelet, you have to already have the paperwork completed. So while you theoretically can just go on Amazon and find something that says DNR, hopefully the EMTs and first responders and everything who would find you in such a condition would know, like, okay, this little plastic thing, this does not look legitimate. Similarly, like the tattoo on the chest, the DNR, that is not enforceable. It would probably raise some questions like, oh, this person probably has an actual DNR, right? And it would sort of increase the hunt for it. But at the end of the day, if it's not a legitimate medical bracelet, then it does not have the order, the force of the order behind it. And the assumption is always that the person wants to be resuscitated unless otherwise stated through a proper channel. So to speak.
You're correct, though. It takes away medical evaluation, but that's the patient's autonomous choice. They can choose to say, I do not want to be resuscitated. And I've seen healthy people make that choice just based on how old they are and things that have maybe happened in their life. It's hard for them to wake up, see the sun shining, and have a good day. It's too much trauma, too much loss, and they've just decided when the door opens, I'm willing to walk through it. But that's the difference between a DNR order and a living will. Living will requires evaluation and usually states something to the effect of at least one, if not two, physicians or clinicians have deemed that my prognosis is X, right? And then we can say, now we're going to execute what that individual wanted. They would like life support removed or whatever, not applied. So you're absolutely correct. It removes the question and the opportunity for evaluation, but that's also sort of the point for most people. They've reached a point in their life, whether it's due to physical quality, et cetera. We all evaluate that in different ways, but they've said, it's enough. When the time comes, I'm ready to go.
I went through that with my father. He said the pain he was suffering from all of his ills and pains. I said to him one day, don't you want to watch your grandchildren grow up? And he said, Craig, you don't understand how much pain I'm in. And I had to respect him for saying that. And it tore me up. But that was his decision, his autonomy, and he went out the way he wanted to go.
Absolutely. Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, sir.
How does the notary public, why do you have to see a notary public to?
It gives some, well.
Sure. So when you're filling out the forms, you have an option. You can either have two witnesses to witness that, like, okay, I'm of sound mind and I'm signing this, or a notary. So the notary would be in lieu of two witnesses who are not named on the document, right? And the purpose of a notary is they are effectively appointed by the state to be like, you are who you say you are. That's really a verification of your identity more than anything else.
What is the cost typically for a notary to do that?
Oh, fantastic question, because what an opening for us. So it can vary. I mean, banks usually have them, or town offices could be like 10, 20 bucks, something like that. However, we are having a second event on the 14th where we will have some notaries available, and you can come and use those notary services for free. We can take copies. If you'd like a copy for the hospital to keep so we can scan it to your record, we can do that. So you just did some of my work for me, so thank you.
We paid you before
Yes.
you arrived.
And there'll be an opportunity for questions at that point too.
Yes.
If you come back and say, I need, I'm really confused by this or whatever, there's an opportunity to ask those questions. And we really decided that, you know, this isn't and shouldn't be something you do tonight, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes some thought and some reflection and some conversation, as Molly pointed out. So come back next Thursday and there'll be notaries and so on.
What time roughly?
5:30. There are flyers at the back of the room as well, so we will throw them at you as you're exiting later on.
What is a healthcare proxy? How does that differ from this, or is it the same?
Well, certain states use certain terms as sort of the default. So New Hampshire tends to use the word agent or surrogate if you have been more informally appointed, like you didn't have one. So, but effectively, they're interchangeable. The healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, the agent, the surrogate. It just means somebody who's making decisions for you that's not you, effectively.
And they travel across state lines?
Yes.
If I
So.
have a healthcare proxy in Massachusetts, it's fine up here.
Yes, so your paperwork would be valid if it was completed in Massachusetts. They do recommend, generally speaking, if you have changed residencies, you should adhere by the state because there are some distinctions between, or differences, I should say, between states and their laws. This is maybe a bit of a random example, but up until a few years ago, there was a part of the Advance Directive form in New Hampshire where you could say, I don't want a nurse practitioner to decide if I'm incapacitated. I only want a physician to do that, which has now been gotten rid of. However, if I haven't replaced that old document, that could still be in effect. You know, and
Why did they get rid of it?
because I think nurse practitioners are more recognized as primary care providers at this point than perhaps they were historically, and so it, you know, it's puts people in a bind because now this is the healthcare provider that they would trust to fill out a DNR with them, but now they can't tell that they're incapacitated. So my point in that is that state laws can vary. It's interchangeable to the greatest extent it can be, assuming there wasn't something directly in conflict with the state law that you were in.
Mike, can I?
Yeah.
I mean, to echo that, if I'm the clinician taking care of the patient and they have a Massachusetts living will, proxy named, et cetera, and that proxy's there giving us advice that is consistent with what's documented, it's official document, we're not going to ignore that person's wishes because it came from Massachusetts. I mean, that's just not good clinical care, and I don't think anyone would ever do that. So I want to make one other comment about the conversations you have and how you do that, and I think that what people can sometimes lose sight of is that these documents are never going to lay out every potential scenario. They just can't possibly do that. But I think a basis for the conversation with whoever you might be naming or asking to be your proxy power of attorney is quality of life, right? So what is an acceptable quality of life for me? And if that prognosis exists, then I want the care. And if that prognosis is dismal, then I don't want to live through that quality of life. I think that's your foundation of the conversation, personally, based on my experience with patients and some situations that I've practiced through with patients and dealing with this kind of stuff.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You all have mentioned refrigerators. Is that another good place for a copy of the...
Yeah, Michael.
I think so you may have also heard the term vial of life. Years ago, EMS providers and hospitals used to provide basically a can or a jar that you put in your fridge. Now it's more recognizable that they go on the refrigerator as a magnet. It can hold, and we have them in the back for you guys tonight if you would like to take them home. She'll bring that forward later. But it's a great place to put a DNR, medication lists, emergency phone numbers, things of that nature, so that if you ever are incapacitated and EMS has to come to your home, we know to go there, right? I mean, one of the first places I go when I walk in the house, if I'm not the first care provider through the door, is the refrigerator. So,
Okay.
Not take your snack.
Could be.
well, you know what? You're not that far off, actually, but yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yes, sir.
So I believe we have a conflict for the next meeting that we can't make. Is there another time that we could meet?
or is there?
Yeah, if you have a provider through Monadnock and you're interested, in connecting and going over it, even just a second set of eyes, like did I appear to do this correctly? Do you have a notary? With a little bit of advanced planning, ironically, we can probably align that for you. We have multiple notaries with the organization, and it's important to your primary care providers as well, just to make sure that these things are buttoned up. So we would be happy to assist.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Hey, there's a document that many institutions use called 5 Wishes. Care planning document. Is that anything different than what we've been talking about this evening?
Yes, so the 5 Wishes is basically a framework for outlining essentially what's in a living will, making those end-of-life choices. Unfortunately, New Hampshire is one of, I think, 5 states who does not recognize that as an actual binding document. So in certain other states, if you have a 5 Wishes document, it sort of outlines what you would like for your care. I'm not terribly familiar with it since I'm here in New Hampshire, but in New Hampshire and I think Kentucky, Montana, I can't recall exactly, the state does not recognize that as enforceable. So, yeah. So yes and no, but if it was the only resource, I'm sure it would help guide some of the decision making, but it's not a legal document here.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, one more. So you as a EMT person,
Yes.
you say you can go to the refrigerator and you could look in somebody's wallet for information.
Correct. Typically, I have a law enforcement person with me if I'm going into somebody's wallet.
Okay, so what about, how do you access and can you put this information in your phone?
There are apps. The hard part about the apps is what you have set up for security limits. So I can put an app on my phone that you do not have to go through my facial rec or whatever, but I gotta tell you, I've already used it a couple of times where I've held phones up to people's faces and got them to unlock. So, yeah.
Okay, so it could be put in here.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
So, the Apple app, it does have the emergency button that you can do, so it doesn't require any facial recognition whatsoever. But you have to go into your phone and physically put it in that portion. It's the SOS portion. And that's for Apple phones. I don't know about Android.
Yeah.
But they do have a way to do it. I haven't found a lot of EMS that are super familiar with that, though. So I would
no.
not rely on it.
No. We are still trying to get that message out. So, but we are actively working on that. All right. Any last questions? Yes, sir.
Do y'all look for an ICE phone number in some?
An emergency contact? Absolutely. Hopefully, it'll be on that with the refrigerator magnet. Your emergency contact number will be there. And many folks that are on an age that are living alone have life alerts now that have that information as well. So, okay. All right, we are good to go. Alicia has some information that she would like to give you. We will be sticking around for a little while. So please feel free if you would like to speak to somebody a little more privately. We are very welcome to do that. We'd like to thank you all for coming tonight.